dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga pulisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga pulisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan din ng kahalagahan ng pulisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socio-economic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan diin ng kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic research portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are glad that you can join our discussion today. Welcome to the PIDS webinar series. Here, we feature our policy studies and the insights of policymakers, experts, and scholars. And through this platform, we hope to provide an accessible venue for evidence-based discussion of current and emerging development issues. So what do we have for you today? Well, we will discuss another interesting topic, and it is about the abundance of diverse data brought about by the digital revolution. We will talk about the various types of new data sources available, such as big data and crowdsourced data, and how we can harness them for better governance and development outcomes. We'll also look into the issues related to the use of these new data sources and how we could address them. I'm Sheila Siar, and I will be your moderator. To formally start our conversation and give us more details about today's event, let us listen to President Aniceto Orbeta Jr. of PIDS for his message. Sir?
Good afternoon. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the following: National Economic Development Authority Director Richard Emerson Ballester, Senate Economic Planning Office Executive Director Merwin Salazar, the Department of Health Director Francis Rose Mamaril, Department of Finance Director Angelica Sarmiento, Philippine Air Force Director Roldan Taloagon, Haribon Foundation Chief Operating Officer Ana Barona, Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation Director Carmencita Toledo, Philippine Business for Education Deputy Executive Director Diane Fajardo, and Sectoral Transparency Alliance Natural Resource Governance Director Chadwick Lianos. Let me also greet our guest officials and colleagues from the government, academia, civil society, media, private sector, and those watching through the PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages. Good afternoon and welcome to our public webinar on addressing data gaps with innovative sources. In today's digital age, a growing number of governments such as Singapore, South Korea, and the United States, as well as institutions and businesses worldwide, have embraced big data to enhance policy formulation, delivery, and analysis of programs and services. The World Bank defines big data as the exponential growth of data, particularly data flowing from ubiquitous mobile phones, satellites, ground sensors, vehicles, and social media. Simply put, it refers to data sets generated daily or regularly that are so vast and complex that processing them requires new computing technologies to extract meaningful insights, hence the term data mining and data analytics. Good practices worldwide have shown that big data helps inform decision-making and programs such as monitoring real-time prices for inflation predictions, search data to predict disease incidents, phone calls and instant messages during disasters, night lights to measure poverty, analyzing climate data, and sourcing materials for home building in disaster-affected countries for better and coordinated response. Locally, smart cities such as Makati, New Clark, and Davao have started to adopt new technologies for the seamless delivery of services, but these are just the beginning. A bigger chunk of the possible applications of big data locally still needs to be explored. Without compromising privacy, the abundance of data offers a wealth of information and possible insights to policymakers and program implementers for better governance, service delivery, and citizen engagement. Therefore, we must adapt and learn how big data can benefit us all and help realize meaningful societal change. We will explore this in today's webinar through the study addressing data gaps with innovative sources. By the way, this is a collaborative study between PIDS and UNDP, and we have guests here from UNDP as well. Authored by PIDS Research Fellow Jose Ramon Albert, Supervising Research Specialist Jana Vizmanos, Research Analyst Micah Munoz, and Research Consultants Aran Bukal, Risa Halili, and Angelo, Lumba, and Gail Ann from Patanye from the UNDP. This study will provide illustrations of how new data sources together with new analytical methodologies could be used to address data gaps in various development issues. To enrich the discussion, as we usually do, We also invited representatives from government and academia to share their insights on how we can use big data in planning for development. We have Director Sheila Quingco of the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority and Professor Joseph Benjamin Ilagan, the Director of the Ateneo de Manila University's IT Entrepreneurship Program. We are very much grateful to have you in this webinar. We would encourage our attendees to stay until the end of the webinar and actively participate in the open forum. Thank you, and I now give back the floor to the moderator, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orbeta. Before I introduce our presenters, well, just a quick reminder on how to join the discussion. So you may post your questions and comments using the Q&A button. So please indicate your name and organization if you want to be identified when I read out the questions. And to all the speakers, you may respond by typing your answers, which will be visible to all the attendees. Alternatively, you can choose to answer the questions live during the open forum. And for our live stream viewers on Facebook, we highly encourage you to participate as well. So please use the comment section on Facebook for your questions or comments, and we will accommodate as many questions as possible that are relevant to the discussion during the open forum. Okay, let us begin our conversation by listening to the presentations. So we have two sets of presentations from the research addressing data gaps through innovative data sources published as a PIDS discussion paper. And this paper, as mentioned by Dr. Orbeta, was produced by a team of researchers from PIDS and the United Nations Development Program. The names of all the authors are on the screen. And if you wish to download the full study, it's available on the websites of PIDS and SERP. Okay, so Jana, Vizmanos, and Angelo Jose or AJ Lumba will deliver the presentations. Jana is a supervising research specialist at PIDS. She earned her master's degree in development management from the Asian Institute of Management and her bachelor's degree in economics from the University of the Philippines School of Economics. And her research areas include innovation and social sector development. She has also co-authored publications on poverty, out of school children, sustainable development goals, innovation performance of Philippine firms, gender, and governance. On the other hand, AJ is a data scientist for the United Nations Development Program PINTIG Lab, where he covers projects on climate finance, circular economy, and the use of non-traditional data for development. He's also a research analyst for the Development Academy of the Philippines, specializing in input-output analysis and global value chain. He is a doctoral candidate in economics at the University of the Philippines, Ilagan, where he also obtained his master's degree in the same field. Okay, so I believe Jana will present first, to be followed by AJ. So Jana, the virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you, Ma'am Sheila. So let me start with an interactive activity with our audience in Facebook and in Zoom. So actually, we will present the Mentimeter app. So it can be easily accessed, and it will be flashed on the screen. So we have actually prepared a simple question in which we want to hear about the insights of our audience. So our poll question would be, what do you use data for? So please limit each answer to one word only or just a phrase. So and you can answer using the provided link in the screen. Can we also flash the actual results so we can see? Okay, so a lot of people are coming in. So 50 people are now providing their answers. So a lot of what we can see here are research. For research, they use data for research, for decision making, for analysis, for policy. Okay, it's still moving. more people are sending their answers. For insights, for statistics. Okay, so for planning, yeah, information, insights. So more and more people are sending their answers. Okay, so I think we already have several answers on the Mentimeter app. So thank you so much for that quick activity, and it really goes to show that our participants are really attentive in the presentation. So please allow me to start now the actual presentation this afternoon. So let me first greet you with good afternoon. So good afternoon, Sir Babes, Ma'am Sheila, our UNDP partners, AJ, Miss Liza, Sir Arlan, Gail, our esteemed panelists, Sir Joben Ilagan, MMDA Planning Director, Ms. Sheila Quingco, and our more than 300 guests and audience in Zoom and in Facebook. So welcome to the webinar. Our policy research studies at PIDS have been making use of either secondary data from sample surveys and censuses conducted by the Philippine Statistics Authority or compilations from administrative data such as DOH COVID infections database, or primary data that we collect from either sample surveys of households and businesses, key informant interviews, and focus group discussions. However, the fourth industrial revolution, which we have referred to in the Institute as FIRE, has triggered the increased use of frontier technologies, including the internet, sensors, and even satellite imagery that have brought about the rise of the big data, which we may think as digital fingerprints or data given off as byproducts of digital activities like internet browsing, social media use, or just moving around with our smartphones. Even PIDS is now collecting information about our clients, from people who download our knowledge products to those who comment on our social media pages and Twitter handles. So for today's webinar, I am both honored and humbled to present some of the findings of our study titled Addressing Data Gaps with Innovative Data Sources with Dr. Jose Ramon Albert, Ms. Mika Munoz, Dr. Alan Brucal, Ms. Liza Halili, Mr. AJ Lumba, and Ms. Gail Ann Patanye. For our presentation, allow me to start off with an introduction of the study, followed by a quick review of related literature on official statistics, digital information, and big data. Then I will briefly talk about the research design of this study before moving on to empirical findings examining PIDS website download data. I will then present some findings from text mining and sentiment analysis of web scrape news data on violence against women, as well as some analysis of Twitter data on Philippine tourism before we close with conclusions, recommendations, and ways forward. So as earlier pointed out, the advent of increased use of FIRE technologies, especially digital technologies, have not only transformed our consuming and producing products and services, but also led to a data revolution with more data being captured, produced, stored, accessed, analyzed, archived, and reanalyzed, and at an exponential pace. I have often pointed out that new data sources, including big data and crowdsourced data, can complement traditional data sources used in official statistics to monitor socioeconomic conditions and various development outcomes. Faced with the growing demand to provide policy advice, PIDS can harness use of innovative data sources to provide decision makers with near real-time information on policy issues. Although we have identified our national development plans and priorities in the Philippine Development Plan, the Ambition 2040, and our commitment to the SDGs, many times we are faced with data gaps on many development issues, even amid the emerging data revolution. PIDS itself is accumulating data on netizens who make use of our knowledge products that we can mine from our website download data, sentiments expressed in social media, as well as the reactions given those by people who participate in our public webinars like you. But currently, little data analytics is being performed on such data holdings. So this study was designed to firstly look into examining some of the data we are accumulating at PIDS, particularly the website data, to firstly gain insights on what the public demands from us, and also examine the use of various new data sources for addressing selected data gaps on tourism and violence against women, among others. Official statistics have traditionally been sourced from data from censuses, sample surveys, admin reporting systems, and other compilation of secondary data following established concepts, definitions, methods, and classification systems. The increased use of digital technologies by Filipinos who several years ago were masters of social media but are now using more Google is providing us big data, which are byproducts of activities from the use of technologies, especially the internet. Big data, however, should be complementing and not replacing traditional data sources. Otherwise, we can make faulty conclusions. Big data analytics should account for significant amounts of noise that can be larger than signals, since big data, just like admin data, was not designed for statistical purposes. All data sources have their own strengths and limitations. That said, despite limitations on big data for biases and possible re-identification of anonymized data, there has been growing interest, especially since costs are generally little, if not none, and that the data is timely, in fact, in near real time. Thus, many international organizations have started to look into use of non-traditional data sources. A UN agency created by the former UN Secretary General called UN Global Pulse examined Twitter conversations on the price of rice in Jakarta and found that a resulting index from these tweets provided a near real-time proxy indicator of food inflation. UN Women did a landscape review of big data for addressing gaps on gender data. Recently, ADB, in cooperation with the National Statistics Office of Thailand and World Data Lab, worked on integrating satellite imagery with census and survey data to yield high-quality poverty statistics at small areas in Thailand. So with the potential to use big data for official statistics, the UN Statistical Commission established in 2014 an expert group to formulate an ongoing global program on harnessing big data. Under the governance of this expert group, 4 physical hubs all over the world have been working together to educate, collaborate, and develop research on using big data for addressing gaps in development data. So with this, our presentation aims to address the following policy questions. How can data from these new data sources be transformed into meaningful insights for development to affect better development outcomes in such areas such as gender, tourism, and later on traffic management? So what strategies can be developed to promote the access, analysis, and use and reuse of new data sources and mitigate risks from abuse of big data analytics? So as was pointed out earlier, our first task in this study was to look at PIDS website download data to contribute to new knowledge about PIDS clients and then move on to examining Twitter data and other web scrape data. Several quantitative tools were used on the new data sources, including market basket analysis for website download data, as well as text mining and sentiment analysis for Twitter and web scrape data. Our research design considers the knowledge discovery process, also known as data mining. As mentioned earlier, we will focus on PIDS web download data, Twitter data, and other web scrape data. These datasets underwent data cleaning or pre-processing before transforming the datasets as a task-relevant data. Once data analytics is employed, extracted data patterns are then subjected to a communication of data stories to yield insights. So as regards our PIDS download data, SimilarWeb provides some useful information to profile our PIDS website visitors. In September 22, so this is the time when we drafted this paper, PIDS website traffic registered over 55,100 visits for last month alone, with a 43 2022 increase compared to August. This is likely on account of our many events, including the Policy Development Research Month. There are more female than male audiences and many are young. So 44% are aged 18 to 24 years old. A total of 64,207 website publication downloads were registered from April 18, 2019 to August 9, 2022. This includes discussion papers, policy notes, research paper series, and articles from Philippine Journal of Development posted at the PIDS website. Comparing the similar web data with actual PIDS web download data we obtained from our Research Information Department and ICTSD, about a fifth of these website visitors who shared some of their basic information are aged 19 to 35, female with postgraduate degree or employed full-time, thus validating the earlier profile of visitors in similar web. So examining the download dataset, which include 20 broad development themes that PIDS cover, health, governance, and agriculture are the top focus areas of publications downloaded in the past 3 years. However, looking closely on the annual distribution of downloads per theme, publications tagged under labor and education are the most downloaded content in PIDS website in 2019 at 13.5%. And health used to rank 5th in terms of frequency of downloads at 7%. However, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, health took over the first spot, comprising 20% of website publication downloads, followed by governance at 12.6%. The following year, more downloads were attributed to governance at 16.5%, overtaking health at 11.7%. This makes sense as the prolonged pandemic posed urgency to formulate health policies to address the consequences of infections. Content level-wise, a discussion paper on the Early Childhood Care Development First 1,000 Days Initiative in selected UNICEF COICA provinces is the most downloaded publication in the PIDS website at 6%. This is followed by a policy note on issues and concerns in the implementation of the performance-based bonus at DepEd and a discussion paper on expanding health insurance for the elderly in the Philippines, both at 2%. For the market basket analysis, PIDS website download data were then subjected to association rule mining. This involves examining the association between different items. So for items, we refer to PIDS research outputs downloaded to find frequent patterns in the PIDS website download transaction database. This association rule mining is also used by many internet platforms such as Amazon or even Shopee to suggest to their clients that customers who brought product A also brought product B. Thus, the association rules, when applied to our download data, generates a set of association rules that identify patterns on what publications or themes of publications tend to be associated or downloaded together when PIDS website visitors download publications. So for the purpose of this presentation, we'll only examine the most prominent themes among PIDS downloads, which is health and also governance. The results per theme were made available in our discussion paper. So the a priori algorithm for association rules identifies item sets that occur with a support greater than a predefined value and calculates the confidence of all possible rules based on those item sets. In this case, publication themes. So the support is set at 0.01 and confidence at 0.1. So the left-hand side stands for LHS stands for left-hand side, which is the antecedent, and the RHS stands for the right-hand side, the consequent. In the table on this slide, the rule suggests that if a website visitor download a health-themed publication, the support of the rule, the probability that a website visitor will also download a governance content given that he or she downloaded a health tag publication is estimated at 28%, is referred to as the confidence of the rule. So for Lyft, a value greater than 1 suggests that health publication downloads increase the chances that governance publications will also be downloaded in a given transaction. So we also tried to examine association rules not only for themes, but also at the individual publication level, but using lower thresholds. The support set at 0.001 indicates too few associations that can be accurately concluded. This is likely because there is still very little transaction on PIDS websites, but we can imagine that over time, we will have more website visits that will enable us to gain more insights on associations. So the next slides will then discuss some findings on text mining, web scrape news contents related to violence against women, and tweets on Philippine tourism. With 4.7 billion users, or 58% of the world's total population, spending 2 hours and 29 minutes a day to keep up to date with current events, connect with family and friends, or search for entertainment, social media is a wealthy source of real-world data for research, marketing, and development of applications. With the advancement of technology, public conversations on the internet on a specific trending topic, such as tweets, can be extracted using programming tools to analyze data from social media. So Twitter, the 7th favorite social media platform, had a total of 238 million monetizable daily active users around the world, 10.5 million of which are from the Philippines. While social media platforms like Twitter are complex websites, there are available tools to web scrape tweets and other data on Twitter. So what is web scraping? Web scraping is the process of extracting publicly available data from a website and can be programmed through Python, a commonly used programming language with its broad ecosystem of well-maintained libraries. Python is often used in web server development, data science, and automation. Analyzing Twitter data by scraping tweets using the Twitter API platform can provide insights on global to local topics and events, gain information to better profile target audience, and identify trends and important conversations on Twitter. So Twitter API platform provides broad access to public Twitter data that users have chosen to share with the world. This can be accessed by applying for a Twitter developer account, and Twitter evaluates the level of access depending on the intended use of the Twitter data for a particular project. However, it is also important to be familiarized with existing laws as well as the terms and policies of the target website subject for web scraping to avoid data privacy and copyright issues. So currently at 19th place and the only Asian country in the top 20 of the 2022 Gender Gap Index conducted by the World Economic Forum, the Philippines fell 2 spots from its 2021 rankings, where it ranked 17th out of 156 countries with a score of 0.784, as indicator on political empowerment remains low. Our highest recorded rank was at 7th place in 2015. Examining administrative data from reported cases on violence against women by DSWD and PNP, we can observe that the trend is falling. However, Ms. Ana Lorene Del Rosario, Information Officer of the Interagency Council on Violence Against Women and Their Children, emphasized that low incidence of cases that does not mean that VOW decreased in one of her interviews. So at the national level, DSWD Eastern Visayas region reported that the number of domestic violence cases during the second quarter of 2020 climbed to 309 cases compared to only 23 cases reported during the first quarter of the 2020. Gilberto Villamor, Regional Gender and Development Focal Person, cited that cases of domestic violence became more rampant during the second quarter last year, as it was during this period when restrictions were imposed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So one should also note that possible biases in social media data, with Google Trends on the term rape not providing clear evidence of an increase during the pandemic, though there was a slight rise, but somehow erratic in other related terms. So based on Data Reportal's 2022 digital report, 82% of their survey respondents worldwide rely on online channels for news. For this study, we were able to web scrape 561 news articles related to violence against women in the Philippines from 5 news media outlets such as ABS-CBN, the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Manila Bulletin, the Manila Times, and Rappler for the period 2016 to 2022 during the Duterte administration. So ABS-CBN and Inquirer has an observed increase in VAR-related news contents in the past 2 years. So for this data set, we employed a sentiment analysis, a natural language processing that analyzes people's opinions, sentiments, evaluations, attitudes, and emotions via a computational treatment of the subjectivity in a text. So the Vader method uses a combination of qualitative and quantitative methods to produce and empirically validate a gold standard sentiment lexicon. However, this method mostly applies to the English language. So by news site, distribution of news contents lean more on the negative side across all news sites. And by year, VAR-related news contents during the last 2 years reflect more negative scores. However, positive and negative scores provide limited insights to address a policy issue. Meanwhile, the resulting word cloud visualized how the issue on violence against women is portrayed and framed among news articles, with the size of the word reflecting its frequency or importance. Children has been closely associated with VOW, which may be attributed to the Republic Act 9262, a national legislation addressing violence against women and children. So our study also explored topic modeling, a statistical modeling technique that discovers abstract or the not so obvious topics in clusters of similar words found in news articles. So we utilized latent dirichlet allocation, wherein the web scrape dataset of news articles is represented as random mixtures over latent topics, where each topic is characterized by a distribution over words. So this can provide insights on most talked about topics within a certain development issue. So for instance, topic 1 may cover abuse reports with a marginal topic probability of 7.8% with keywords such as abuse, national, must, Philippine, life, report, accused, Quezon, PNP, and local. So moving on to a much lighter topic, so the 35th Annual Condé Nast Traveler Reader's Choice Awards recognized the world-renowned island of Boracay as the top island in Asia for 2022. Palawan also entered the list of top islands, ranking 8th in Asia, while the Philippines placed 30th out of the 48 top countries in the world and is also awarded among the top 10 friendliest countries. Tourism is one of the most negatively impacted sectors by the COVID-19 pandemic due to large-scale restrictions on mobility in the past 2 years. As borders start to ease and leisure travel is already allowed in most parts of the country and the world, so #revenge travel, it is very timely to examine tourism data to aid policymakers formulate programs and decisions to reinvigorate and harness the competitiveness of the Philippine tourism industry. Official sources of tourism statistics include tourism satellite accounts from the PSA and tourism demand statistics from the Department of Tourism. The June 2022 press release of PSA discusses data such as share of tourism to GDP and total employment for the 2021 period. Meanwhile, DOT provides more timely data on visitor arrivals by country of residence. However, it would be more useful if more data are made available, such as demographics and purpose of travel, to gain better understanding of our target market. So timeliness is also a factor of consideration since peak season of tourist destinations may differ. So example, Boracay, known for its white sand beaches, may have more engagement during the second quarter of the year. LGU admin data may also be a data source. However, data is less likely to be subjected to data curation. Despite issues on sampling and representativeness, our study team scraped tweets to learn more about the sentiments of Twitter users on Philippine travel. Due to limitations set by our Twitter API account in scraping tweets using keywords such as travel and Philippines, our study team was only able to obtain 4,986 tweets for the third quarter of 2022. Again, we use the word cloud to illustrate particular topics, hashtags, or words that are frequently associated with Philippine tourism. Tourist destinations in the Philippines such as Manila, Boracay, and Cebu are among the top 20 words in terms of word count. So it's more fun in the Philippines. A tourism campaign launched 10 years ago under the leadership of former Secretary Ramon Jimenez during the Pinoy administration still remains a memorable tourism tagline as the 62nd most frequent word in the word count. We also tried to proxy Philippine tourism satisfaction by analyzing emotions of tweets using Plutchik and Ekman classifications, with both methods generating joy as the most prominent emotion among Twitter users at 66.1% and 85.1% of the tweets, respectively. So topic modeling was again utilized for this data source. Boracay, previously mentioned as a frequent word, is among the keywords on topic 1 with a marginal topic probability of 33.8% that this abstract topic behind this cluster of words will appear on tweets being analyzed. So for our recommendations and ways forward, so for PIDS data in particular, it will benefit our institute to continue examining PIDS web download data regularly, including the regular conduct of a market basket analysis to improve training the algorithm to identify meaningful patterns of association beyond themes, but also in individual publications. This information can help PIDS develop targeted campaigns for events in the future. Capacity building programs for data analytics on new data sources can help us harness innovative data sources to provide policy advice to decision makers with near real-time information and uncover limitations of these sources. It is important to recognize that these new data sources complement but cannot replace traditional data sources such as surveys and censuses that undergo regular processes of data curation to maintain data quality in terms of relevance, accuracy, timeliness, accessibility, interpretability, and coherence. Big data provides a fast and cheap stream of information, thus enhancing responsiveness to socio-economic development problems being addressed in the policy cycle. We should also recognize that there are weeds among the wheat in the use of big data. Risk assessment and risk mitigation on use of big data and other new data sources is necessary since the world of big data and hyperconnectivity no longer guarantees irreversible de-identification that can yield potential harms posed to individuals and to identifiable groups or populations. We should examine identifying what are the thresholds at which the identified data is no longer personal. Is it feasible and practical to seek consent in situations of emergency, development response when data is de-identified? We should balance needs between protecting data privacy and harnessing use of new data sources for safeguarding civil rights, ensuring fairness, and preventing discrimination. Thank you, and this ends my presentation.
Let's now turn to AJ, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So let me start things off by first expressing our gratitude to PIDS for organizing this event or this webinar, and of course for giving us the platform to showcase our work on non-traditional data. As well as our discussants, Professor Ilagan and Director Satura-Quingco for taking time to do an extensive review of our discussion paper. And of course, the participants here who expressed their interest in learning about non-traditional data and their use cases. So let me just share screen. So our presentation now focuses on the use of non-traditional data, examining it in tackling the traffic congestion problem in the Philippines, in particular, the Metro Manila traffic congestion problem. This is a use case of the Waze dataset we're trying to establish in partnership with PIDS. So I think we all know that in the back of our minds, traffic has been a long-standing issue in the country, lalong-lalo na in Metro Manila. I'm pretty sure that a lot of us here have had our own fair share of experiences being stuck in traffic, navigating EDSA, C5, and spending minutes, sometimes hours, from getting to point A to point B. Actually, there are studies that attributed or estimated the costs that accrue based on being stuck in traffic. JICA, for example, in 2020, estimated that on a daily basis, there is about 3.5 billion pesos per day that are lost in terms of opportunities that we would otherwise have access to if we were not stuck in traffic. And there are also studies that project this situation becoming worse over time. In 2018, there is this result that said that if status quo restrictions and mobility policies are still in place, then what would happen is by 2030, there would be a tripling of this problem in terms of opportunity costs and economic costs that traffic causes. Of course, there's also some environmental costs related to traffic congestion, as well as overall health and well-being, may it be our respiratory health, or it can also be our mental health, being stuck in traffic, which of course, sometimes we can just use that time to meet our friends and family instead of having to navigate through a very busy road. So even if traffic has been a long-standing issue in the country for quite a while now, there are actually some recent developments that Jana has alluded to a while ago, surveys, in terms of the individuals now starting to employ or integrate the use of digital technologies in their daily lives. And since these are being connected to some data warehouse out there or database out there, our activities that we integrate digital technologies with find their way to these databases and give rise to big data. And since over time, computing technologies have advanced and there are developments in machine learning and data science, we can now work with that big data to come up with very useful insights for tackling real-world problems. So one such example of a digital technology is actually this application, which you might be familiar with. It's Waze. So it's a gold mine for traffic and commuting information because it has data that's relatively accurate, it's high in frequency, and it's readily available upon request from the Development Data Partnership. So if we look at the Waze traffic congestion data that we accessed through the World Bank, through the DDP, it's the Development Data Partnership, our latest extract actually gives almost 36 million reports covering April 2019 to April of last year. And in terms of geographic coverage, there are 9,297 streets across 61 cities that that these traffic reports fall under. So if you look at the variables or attributes of the dataset, we have the following interesting ones. So every time a jam occurs while you're using Waze, there is a unique ID that's attributed to that jam report. And of course, it also has a date and time for when it occurred. And some geographic variables here, in particular, there's city, there's street, start node, and end node. So start node is essentially when you turn on your Waze application, it registers where you started from. And the end node is the destination that you input when you use the application. And the traffic congestion variables that can be very useful in that data set include speed, KMH, which stands for speed in kilometers per hour of a report. There's also length. It's length of the jam in meters. So sometimes you see that there's a bar towards the left of your application, which says how long in time and how long in distance this certain traffic report will last. And there's also delay, another one of the congestion variables, which measures the difference between the jam and free flow speed in seconds. Finally, there's this categorical variable called traffic congestion level, which gives a value of 0 if the traffic is just free flow, and 5 if it's blocked. And finally, there's this variable called geo, which is just a line string of lat and long coordinates that can be very useful when we're conducting our geospatial analysis. So just to give you an idea of how extensive this Waze traffic congestion data is, this is a visualization of average speed in kilometers per hour for 2 dates. So the one on the right is for December 1, 2021. And then we got this report, or we got the reports from 6 to 7 p.m. And the one on the left is for August 30, 2021 at the same time, 6 to 7 p.m. So why 6 to 7 p.m.? Well, generally, we acknowledge that around 6 to 9 p.m. is the rush hour at night, or maybe 6 to 8 p.m. is the rush hour at night, and usually starts at 6. And why do we choose these 2 dates? Well, December 1, 2021 is a time when restrictions related to COVID-19 were generally more lax, or some of them were even lifted. And August 30, 2021 is counterfactual in the sense that it's a day that we expect less traffic because it's National Heroes Day. It's a holiday, and in the back of our minds during holidays, there is less traffic and therefore congestion in the area. So what you see here when we look at it from a bird's eye view perspective is it's actually quite extensive and covers the entire road network of Metro Manila, from the major thoroughfares up until the peripheral roads that extend to the NCR Plus members, such as Rizal, Laguna, Bulacan, and Cavite. And noticeably, as we look here at the date wherein there was a national holiday, there's a big dip in terms of reports that we observe here compared to December 1, 2021 at the height of traffic congestion. And December in general, based on our exploratory data analysis, is one of the most congested months, followed by January. So of course, if we're going to use this type of data, we're trying to pitch it for everyday use to create some insightful analysis for policymaking. We have to make sure that the data is reliable at the first place. And we try to establish reliability by producing some exploratory data analysis and seeing if the results more or less match our common sense understanding of the traffic issue in Metro Manila. So the first thing we did here was we validated whether total jam lengths in the area, Metro Manila, per days of the week across the time period considered, follow what we generally understand to be the pattern over time. And it did make sense. So for example, here we see that Friday is the most congested in terms of jam length, followed by Saturday, Monday, and the last one here is Sunday. So why are these? I think we all know why these may be the case. So Friday is the end of the work week. So it's usually when people use their private vehicles mostly, and it's usually some day of the week that we all dread, saying, Friday na naman. I'm pretty sure that I need to go home early, etc., and be wary of traffic. So it makes sense here. Saturday as well, it's usually the time when some people conduct their social activities or as well as some errands that they were not able to do during the work week. And Monday is the start of the work week, while Sunday, being the lowest one here, is usually recognized as a time for rest and family, and thus showing the least congestion among all the weekdays. So we can do an analysis of trends per time here. So to analyze this, just see that the x-axis here corresponds to hours of the day. So this is midnight, and this is 11 p.m. And this y-axis is average jam length. So for each day of the week, we just average, and for each time period, meaning hour, we just average jam length across all reports that fall under the time period. And we see that across all the days here, there are 2 peak hours in terms of traffic. So the first one is, it occurs in the morning. So the morning rush is when we experience a lot of traffic when we begin our work days, and begin our day generally, and we traverse traffic in Metro Manila. And then there's also another peak hour that occurs at night. That's when people generally go home from their workplaces, and that occurs somewhere at around 6 p.m. at night. So based on these two first figures, the data makes sense, and it seems to depict what we know as common sense knowledge of the issue of traffic in general. And we also did temporal analysis, so the same x-axis here and the same y-axis here, but we did this not for days of the week, but by years. So the trends that you see here, the series that you see here correspond to years, 2019 here being blue and 2022 being light blue, etc. So what we see here is in terms of 2020, 2021, and 2022, there are very similar trends among those in terms of average jam length. And when we look at 2019, interestingly, jam length at certain periods of time, meaning around 4 a.m. and then all the way here at around 9 p.m. at night, jam lengths were less compared to the pandemic years. And by the way, notice that this is jam length. This is just the distance of a report, meaning from point A, from where the jam started, point B to where it ended. This is not the speed in kilometers per hour of vehicles traversing that jam length. Since if we look at here in the next chart, we notice that in those same time periods that I mentioned a while ago, when jam length was less compared to the pandemic years, in 2019, the speed in kilometers per hour of reports were less, meaning they're traversing traffic more slowly compared to the pandemic years. And the same trends as well are observed for 2020, 2021, and 2022. Lastly, in terms of average jam delay by hour, once again, this just compares a situation wherein there's no traffic, so there's free flow, versus the situation wherein there's a jam. What would be the difference in terms of seconds for those two sequences? So we see here that delays are higher in 2019. This is when there were no restrictions in traffic, etc. And we see that all of these series here generally follow the same trend. And once again, levels are higher in 2019, meaning it took more, the difference between free flow and jams are higher during that year compared to the pandemic years. So now that we did some sensible check and validation of the data, we can now start to explore where we can possibly apply that data and figure out their use cases for addressing and tackling real-world problems. So we will be developing another policy paper when we will extensively discuss these applications. But for the meantime, we noted here that it can be used for the following. So we can assess the viability and or the effectiveness of these innovations related to traffic using that data set. So first, you have your private and public institutions or organizations possibly looking into changing the nature of work. Does work from home work in terms of not just making it easier for your workers, but does it also help contribute in lessening traffic in Metro Manila? The hybrid work setups as well work, meaning only certain days of the week. There were certain occasions wherein this was already implemented, and we can just go back in time and look at those reports from back then, from wherein these setups or arrangements were quite prominent, and check how they are right now when these setups are becoming less and less common and prominent. And we can also look at some pilot restrictions by LGUs, how effective they are in terms of mitigating traffic, such as high occupancy vehicle lanes. So according to one of my colleagues, there are certain times in a city where she lives in that certain lanes in her city can only be used by drivers that have at least one passenger, one or more passengers. It cannot be used by those driving a vehicle on their own. So maybe that has had an effect on lessening traffic, since it makes it incentivizes carpooling in a sense. And there are also certain times when LGUs implement route modifications. So sometimes some roads are closed off and you are directed to use another route to get from one point to the other. And street traffic flows are also modified. So you have occasions wherein two-way traffic is sometimes converted to one-way traffic schemes. And of course, recently we've had a modification of the number coding scheme by the MMDA. So since we have some time periods covered wherein this was not the case, since we were following the the previous number coding scheme by the MMDA. Then there's also this period wherein there was no number coding scheme by the MMDA. And now, where we have it, we can essentially look at the effectiveness of such an implementation or a policy in terms of the overall goal of lessening traffic. And in the future, there might also be some measures that incentivize carpooling or the use of public transport by the LTFRB. So even if we see that there's a big uptake in terms of those people who are using public transport and are carpooling, at the back of our mind, we're trying to answer, does it really help lessen traffic? And of course, we can link it back to this data set and see if that truly is the case. And for more exciting kinds of implementations here, we can also look at some solutions that we haven't implemented yet, but in other economies they seem to be working, such as traffic incentives or disincentives, such as congestion charges, wherein you establish congestion areas in your economy or your country. For example, EDSA is a congestion area. And for you to be able to enter EDSA or go from your place to your destination, you have to pay some fee. There are fixed fees or fares there. There are also some fees that correspond to how long you stayed within the congestion area. And we can simulate that along with other variables and see how much we can accumulate in terms of revenue. And then that revenue we can also simulate will be earmarked for improving public transportation, and playing around the model, see how that would help decrease traffic in the long run, some period that we established to be the terminal point of our analysis. So there are also some academic questions here which look into people's behavior. One of those questions that we can answer is maybe is distance from public transport stations related to a higher propensity to drive a private vehicle? So one of our colleagues said that maybe I'm just driving a private vehicle because I'm so far from a bus station. And instead of me driving from my place to a parking near there and then take a public transportation, I'm just going to drive the entire way. So we can also analyze this by looking into reports near public transport stations versus those that are getting farther and farther away from public transport stations, and see if this hypothesis holds true. There are also some studies, for example, one done by the University of Pennsylvania, wherein they used the Waze traffic congestion dataset to do event planning. So sometimes you want to hold some events involving a lot of people, public events, and we might, in the back of our mind, say that it might just cause more traffic, especially in the primary road networks. So the optimization problem looks like what would be the best time and date or even place for which we can hold this event such that traffic is minimized. And hopefully the solutions that it would find, the best time, date, and place would correspond, of course, to holding the event that would lead to the less traffic congestion among all the other options. So lastly, moving forward, we do acknowledge that traffic in and of itself, from a policy perspective, is not the main issue. It's actually those costs and concerns that are related to it that it causes along the way, such as the economic, health, and environmental costs that's associated with. So what we just need to figure out and find out is to determine what is the key role of traffic jams in forming these wide-ranging problems. What are the transmission mechanisms? And if we do figure that out, then we can do the proper spatial and temporal analysis of traffic jams. It will be a valuable use cases for going back to the overall or the bigger set of problems, such as, of course, the economy, health, and environment. And before we can do that, we have to merge this traffic congestion data of Waze with data sets that tackle other things, such as health, environment, weather, built environment, climate, and the economy, so that we can have more nuanced analysis, sensible predictions, and impact measurement. Lastly, if this use case, and of course their applications, are found valuable by our policymakers, we can actually get regular updates from the DDP to the World Bank. And we can do that to keep track of more current trends and emerging patterns in the subject matter at a very frequent level, and of course at a more cost-efficient manner. So that ends my presentation. Thank you once again. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Jana and AJ, for your comprehensive presentations on how we can make use of big data to augment not not replace traditional data sources in analyzing issues, as well as the products and services of organizations such as those of PIDS. And in one of AJ's final slides, I remember that he mentioned the potential applications of Waze data to improve traffic management. It's very good. Okay, so indeed, we can tap a tremendous amount of data from news sources if we know how to use and analyze them and distill important insights through data analytics. So, well, I guess the key is recognizing these new data sources, knowing how to use them, including their limitations as well, and also taking into consideration ethical issues such as data privacy. Okay, so thanks again to our presenters. To enrich our discussion, we also invited an information technology expert and a representative from the government to share their reactions and insights. First, we will hear from Professor Jose Benjamin Ilagan, who is a full-time faculty member and the program director of the Information Technology and Entrepreneurship program of the Ateneo de Manila University. He's also an independent digital and data consultant to several companies. Professor Ilagan co-founded Siar Technologies, a mobile cloud and data software services provider to large businesses in the Philippines. He spent 10 years in Oracle Philippines, handling various roles related to solutions architecture. He is currently taking his PhD in computer science and has completed all academic units for his Master of Science degree in data science at the Ateneo de Manila University. He graduated from the same university with degrees in Master of Science in Computer Science and a Bachelor of Science degree in Management Engineering. Professor Joben, the floor is now yours. Joben, you may proceed.
Yes. Can I be heard? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr., Dr. Sheila, Jana, and AJ. I was geeking out on your presentation, so I don't know what else to contribute, but I'll try my best. So thank you for having me to be a discussant in this paper. Full disclosure, my son and I conducted a Python workshop for PIDS. I see that the papers themselves do not directly trace back to the material we provided. So it's encouraging that the participants have gone beyond the classroom. Very good job. I was asked to identify 3 items where I could comment on. I've identified 6 actually, so I'll just go through them. So this is the short-term portion of my comments and recommendations. I'll end later with a longer-term set of recommendations, if you will. And these long-term recommendations, to be honest, are coming from a technology standpoint, where you can address certain things that you've already discussed in your paper. Merging data, finding more meaning, finding more use cases. So starting off with some of the things I've observed. So use of Vader, great. So again, I'm geeking out on the various use cases you've identified. Use of word clouds, use of LDA, use of Waze data, AJ, very good job. Use of similar web, Jana, very good. And market basket analysis, which is familiar to me from a business analytics application perspective. So I'll just make a few comments on those. I do have a few callouts, and I understand that the paper itself was written a few months back. If you if you're still in the news, and you've probably read somewhere that Elon Musk, who recently bought Twitter, decided to shut down access to Twitter data, the free version at least, kahit kami naputulan in academe, no? But you have to pay for monthly access to the so-called data fire hosts that they have. The question then is it worthwhile spending on that fire hose? It can be argued that, okay, Twitter is, well, questionable usage at this point, and it can also be argued that there are far richer sources of social media data, like Reddit, to a certain extent Instagram, but Instagram itself doesn't have an API. No. So that's one call out. The other one is Vader. So Vader, as Jana mentioned, only supports English, so that's correct. The workaround that I've seen as I've prepared for this talk really is some research studies actually convert Tagalog and other local dialects to English first, and then from the English version, they apply Vader. So that's the workaround. And the next question there is, do you actually manually translate? And there are far sophisticated tools now. No? Google Translate is one. And you've probably heard of ChatGPT. ChatGPT itself, I mean, for those of you who are familiar with it, you can try translating a particular phrase from Tagalog to English. It can do it, not 100% correct, but it's good enough. Waze data, what I would recommend from great use cases, by the way. I did notice certain things. You mentioned the work from home. One way to enrich that is if you have a database storing not just the nodes, point A to point B, but being able to cluster the routes through edges. So you'll have edge clusters. So for example, home to work, home to office. Let's say if a common pattern is Quezon City to Makati for home to work, or let's say Pasig to Quezon City, for example, for home to, and you're able to identify the top clusters, you can extend the dialogue not only to improve traffic, but to share it with property management, for example, or LGUs. Right? So for example, and I understand a lot of BPOs already do this. You have satellite headquarters or mini headquarters where, for example, workers who reside in Quezon City can co-locate and just establish a Quezon City sub-headquarters, something like that. No? So those are the things that can emerge if you're able to design your data models, your databases accordingly. Other suggestions for improvements. So I understand PIDS itself. So one of the use cases you did was the downloads. So if there's a way to capture searches, if you have a search field, for example, if you capture the searches done by those who want to research, then those can be fed into your data models as well. I saw from your website, I looked at the source of your website. You do use Google Analytics. So if there's a way to capture the Google Analytics data and feed into your data lake, if you have one, then it would be good also. You mentioned market basket analysis. So you did mention the likes of Amazon, where people who bought this also bought that. You might want to translate that into, well, in the case of the PIDS website, recommendation engines or recommender systems. So once you download it, there's another call to action. People who downloaded this also downloaded that. And you can have several of those. So all my recommendations actually point to the need for data modeling and data consolidation across sources of data sets. So let me get to that. And you're not limited to structured data. There are, well, this is not really anecdotal, though. 90% of data in the world is unstructured or unstructured. So you'll have more or less 3 categories of unstructured data. You have text, visual, and audio. So like this talk, for example, I understand this is recorded. You can easily transcribe this, not manually, but if you run it through certain tools like, let me show you. And I have it here. Okay. So audio, for example, you have OpenAI's Whisper. OpenAI is the creator of ChatGPT. They have another product called Whisper, where you can run either English or Tagalog audio, and it churns out text transcribed already. And you can go through paid services like Otter.ai, which I use a lot for focus group discussions. So it automatically transcribes the meeting. You also have Google Voice Dictate. If it's a single person just dictating, and I use this a lot for my course note preparations, and so on and so forth. From there, whether it's text, visual, and audio, you can do feature extraction, whereas you have qualitative data, you can quantify certain things like Vader, which Jana already mentioned. And underneath, you have the different programming languages and frameworks, Python, R, or even Excel and Google Sheets. My longer-term recommendation is you dump everything in some so-called data lake, and I've categorized the different types of data sources that you might have. So for PIDS, you have your reports, you might have your meetings also, downloads. On the right, you probably have webinars like this, YouTube, etc., where you can feed into transcribers, and you'll have text, which in turn you can mine for sentiment, and so on and so forth. Then below, you have more structured data, Google Trends, OpenStreetMaps, which you can combine with Waze data also. And what else? The interesting thing I wanted to show later, before I end, so everything is dumped into a data lake, and then you do data cleansing, which AJ already highlighted. Just verify if things kind of make sense. So you have your analytics database, and then you can have at least 3 outputs after. Descriptive analytics, predictive, so artificial intelligence, machine learning, and prescriptive. Now, I was asked also as part of this discussion, what different data sources can be used also. So this is one. So this is PhilJeps for accredited suppliers. If you're able to combine this with certain things like, let me skip this. Combine this with another portal like GPPB for emergency procurement, for example. You can come up with meaningful analytics, which my students were able to do. These are sophomore students. They were able to come up with. I won't get into the details of what's showing here, but you can imagine the different types of analytics you can do just by combining different data sets. And here are visualizations that they were able to come up with. Can combine further with other data sets like BIR, for example, has zonal data. They're not really structured cleanly, but if you feed into your data lake and you have a bunch of data engineers, for example, who help clean into some form that you can craft SQL statements, for example, if you're familiar with SQL, or if you do R or Python, then you can come up with richer insights and richer visualizations. Then combine it with OpenStreetMap. For the most part, this is free. Combine it with Waze and Google Maps, actually. Although Google Maps, I understand, you have to pay to access a certain portion. And even government has a portal, which is largely untapped, data.gov.ph, where you can dump everything in your own data lake. And you can have various CSVs, PDFs, if you will, and Excel files. And there are a few offices where you can tap rich data like Banco Central, and so on and so forth. So I will end here, and I hope I've been able to do justice to the invitation. So thank you again for inviting me to share my thoughts.
Thank you very much, Professor Hoban, for sharing with us some technical pieces of advice on how we can use various new data sources. I am sure the IT and analytics people in the audience are having a field day right now. If you have questions for Professor Hoban, well, we have the open forum later. Okay, so for our second discussant, we invited the Metro Manila Development Authority, or the MMDA, to react to AJ's presentation and share their thoughts on using new data sources for better transport and traffic management. Representing MMDA is Director Sheila, Gail Satura-Quingco, who heads the Metropolitan Development Planning Service Office. Director Gail is an urban development specialist with extensive experience and published works on urban and regional planning, development policy analysis, project management, and climate change and disaster risk management. She graduated from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and from the Eulogio Amang Rodriguez Institute of Science and Technology with a master's degree in public administration. Let us listen to what she has to say.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, let me thank the Philippine Institute for Development Studies for inviting me here today. I am really honored to give comments and insights on this very interesting paper. Also, would like to commend the authors of the PIDS discussion paper entitled Addressing Data Gaps with Innovative Data Sources. First and foremost, I agree with the conclusion and policy insights of this discussion paper. But then I will be narrowing down my reactions on the topic of the traffic situation in Metro Manila, and just to add some of the agency's initiatives when it comes to digital transformation as well as data gathering. The MMDA, by virtue of the Republic Act 7924, sets the policies concerning traffic in Metro Manila and shall coordinate and regulate the implementation of all programs and projects concerning traffic management, especially pertaining to enforcement, engineering, and education. MMDA policies, projects, and programs that are being approved and implemented, particularly on traffic enforcement and management, are all based on data statistics. Let me start with how MMDA collects traffic-related data using the traditional method. So the following are samples of traffic survey that our agencies is conducting on a regular basis. The Traffic Engineering Center of the MMDA is the office responsible for the conduct of the traffic survey. We have the team of traffic surveyor in charge of conducting vehicle volume count in each major thoroughfares in the NCR. We also keep track of travel time via cars and bus as part of our effort to monitor travel time for public transportation. One of the data that we are producing is the annual average daily traffic, or the AADT. And based on the AADT, there is a 21.81% increase in the number of vehicles passing through the major thoroughfares of Metro Manila from 2003 to 2019. However, the increasing trend was disrupted in 2020 due to the surge of COVID-19 in the country, reducing 6% in the total number of vehicles traveling on the road in Metro Manila, which is also similar to the trend displayed by Waze in the presentation earlier. In 2021, on the other hand, an increasing trend was again observed with 10.21% from the previous year, representing 3.1 million vehicles, as the nation shifted to the new normal and allowed traveling within its borders. In relation to the increasing volume of vehicles using the road in Metro Manila, it was also reported that the average travel speed in the region declined from 2013 to 2019 as the road reached their maximum capacity, resulting in longer hours spent in traveling. However, these traffic figures started to improve during the pandemic in 2020 with 1.95 average minutes per kilometer speed from the previous 2.57 minute per kilometer in 2019. For the year 2021, it was emphasized that the travel speed and travel time slowly returned to its normal before the pandemic. We also monitor statistical accident using Metro Manila Accident Reporting and Analysis System, or the MARAS, to provide us with a better view of the black spots in Metro Manila as we use the data for provision of road safety furnitures. So the MARAS is a compilation based on the road crash reports of various police traffic precincts for an ongoing database of all traffic accidents occurring in Metro Manila, including incidences on fatal, non-fatal, and damage to properties, which can indicate areas for safety improvements. The agency uses MARAS as its basis in identifying areas where safety improvements need to be made. With the use of the MARAS, we can also identify the black spots, which is connoted cluster of road crashes at a certain locations at a given period of time. So the top 3 major road black spots in the NCR, or areas where accidents occur mostly frequently, are EDSA, Commonwealth, and CP Garcia, or the C5 road. As shown on the screen, the road crash statistics trends and comparison of 2019 to 2022 shows a tremendous decrease of reports in 2020 due to pandemic. In 2021, Quezon City recorded the highest number of road accidents, followed by the city of Manila and Makati. And the cities with lower accidents reported, on the other hand, are Municipality of Pateros, Nabotas, Malabon, and City of San Juan. In a monthly report, the highest number of accidents was reported in December. Overall, there is an average of 160 road accidents recorded per day in 2021 in the region. Now, let's proceed with how the agency is also trying to utilize big data sources, which is reflected in its new and modern initiative. Traffic congestion in Metro Manila, as we all know, has become a major political and social problem. With a 1.7 population growth rate per year in the National Capital Region, the MMDA observes that the suburbanation of the surrounding area and the number of vehicle registration are rapidly increasing. According to the study entitled Formulation of Transportation Development Roadmap to Support Sustainable Development of Metropolitan Manila and its surrounding areas, which was conducted in 2014 with the support of the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, the cost of transportation to the people in Metro Manila was 2.4 billion a day, and if no action would be taken, this was estimated to balloon to 6 billion pesos by 2030. This cost proves the need to solve traffic and transportation problems through a comprehensive action that has both hard and soft aspects, such as the road and railway network, and a comprehensive traffic management plan to support future economic development. So the study identified the need for a comprehensive traffic management plan in Metro Manila that will analyze the current traffic situation in the region and therefore be able to develop effective and efficient measures for traffic management in the region. To address these and other traffic issues, the 3-year study entitled the Project for Comprehensive Traffic Management Plan for Metro Manila, or CTMP project for short, has been carried out by the MMDA with the assistance of the JICA to identify and analyze traffic bottlenecks and formulate a 5-year action plan on traffic management, which also includes developing a capacity of traffic management institutions and their personnel. So the CTMP aims to analyze the current traffic scenario in Metro Manila and to develop a more effective and efficient traffic management in the region. Its main objective is to maximize the mobility of all road users in a sustainable way through an appropriate traffic management system. So there are 4 project outputs. First is the data-driven identification of major traffic bottlenecks in Metro Manila. Next is the formulation of a 5-year comprehensive traffic management plan, the implementation of selected improvement measures as pilot projects, and lastly, the capacity building of LGUs in traffic management. So the members for the Joint Coordinating Committee for the project is composed of representatives from the Metro Manila LGUs, of course, MMDA, DPWH, DOTR, NEDA, JICA, LTO, LTFRB, DICT, DANR, and the Japanese Embassy. So the key activities of the plan are the following. First is to identify and classify road networks in the region for traffic management. Next is identify and profile congested intersections, corridors, and sub-areas. Third is the review of existing traffic management policies and infrastructure. Fourth is the conduct of case studies. Fifth is the implementation of the pilot projects. And lastly, the formulation of a 5-year traffic management action plan. So at the start of the project, the Philippines had no scientific definition for traffic bottlenecks. To develop one, the JICA project team had to collect traffic data such as the travel speed from Waze, road inventory, and traffic counts, which were then organized into databases to support an evidence-based definition. The opinions and observation of both MMDA and the Metro Manila LGUs were likewise taken into account in the process through several questionnaire surveys, which identified 200 potential intersection bottlenecks. Further analysis trimmed this number down to 42 priority bottlenecks, for which countermeasures with estimated costs were prepared. As for the remaining 167 non-critical bottlenecks, Japan project team grouped them into 64 segment bottlenecks comprising 1 or more intersection bottlenecks and congested links. So as you can see here, we both use the traditional and the big data sources as well. As mentioned earlier, one of the key activities of the CTMP is the conduct of case study for resolving traffic bottlenecks. So our aim here, of course, is to do studies that can be replicated in other areas. So case study number 1 is the improvement of intersection bottleneck at major roads. Case number 2 is the improvement of segment bottleneck along corridors. And case number 3 is the improvement of intersection bottleneck on local roads. So in this case, a scientific analysis of traffic bottlenecks has been made and manuals have been prepared to assist the counterparts in replicating this. So one of the key activities also of the CTMP is the implementation of selected improvement measures as pilot projects. So for pilot number 1, we have the improvement in AI application in Ortigas corridor. The project also considered the capacity development of the main actors on traffic management, especially the Metro Manila LGUs. And lastly, pilot project 3 is on the development of traffic management database, which aims to establish a data platform and verify the related data and traffic management planning, as well as putting a geospatial component for traffic management analysis. Following the Philippines government national transport policy, the vision of this project's 5-year action plan is to maximize the mobility of all users of the transportation infrastructure, which should be developed sustainably by establishing an appropriate transportation management system. And based on this vision, the following 5 goals were identified that will enable inclusive and people-oriented mobility. To achieve these goals, 12 strategies comprising hardware, software, and humanware are also proposed. These strategic approaches were identified through project activities. And based on the 12 strategies, the Japan project team, in coordination with the MMDA, DOTR, and DPWH, as well as several Metro Manila LGUs, proposes 10 traffic management projects, as listed on the slide. Not only to immediately minimize congestion at the 42 priority intersection bottlenecks, but also to address wide range of traffic and safety issues in Metro Manila. Each of these 10 projects, which involves construction or capacity enhancement, addresses several strategies at a time and can be implemented immediately in a short, medium, and or long term. The CTMP project also studied the issues besetting MMDA in terms of the data collection and analysis, planning, project implementation, traffic control and enforcement, as well as the operation and maintenance of signal and other systems. Traffic-related institutions such as the LGUs, DOTR, and the DPWH were also assessed so far as their mandate in traffic management is concerned. In conclusion, new data sources are essential when it comes to their timeliness. However, traditional data sources that went through a process and rigid methods in which reliability and accuracy cannot be questioned are still irreplaceable. In essence, big data sources are data sets that are too large or complex for traditional data processing applications. Rapid development and adoption of disruptive technology, rapidly growing mobile data traffic, cloud computing traffic, and high penetration of smartphones all contribute to creating an ever-increasing volume and complexity of large data sets. Big data source has emerged as a highly powerful tool for an organization, not taking into account their size and the industry they are part of. The most important advantage of big data is the fact that it opens up new possibilities for organizations. Improve operational efficiency, improve customer satisfaction, and a drive for innovation are only a few among the many benefits of big data. Despite the proven benefit of big data sources, it still holds numerous untapped possibilities that are waiting to be explored. All data supplied, whether from modern or traditional sources, are both essential and serve as a foundation for implementing policy and programs, especially on traffic management. That would be all. Thank you and mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Director Sheila, Gail Sheila Satura-Quingco of the MMDA. Thank you for sharing with us how the MMDA is utilizing new sources of data in addition to traditional sources for improving traffic management. Unfortunately, Director Gail cannot join us live today. Nevertheless, we thank her for sending us her comments. Okay, so friends, after listening to the presentations and reactions of our speakers, let's spend some time unpacking the issues on the use of big data, because these issues, as we all know, have implications on the extent that we can harness this big data sources. No, and so we are now in our panel discussion and open forum. Later on, I will read some of the questions from the audience, but right now, let's have a brief panel discussion. And let us start by discussing some of the fundamental ethical issues in the use of big data sources, such as privacy and confidentiality. And I want to ask our speakers' insights on this. How can we ensure that, when you use big data, we are not violating data privacy issues? Well, it's important to discuss this because, let's say, for example, you're using data from Facebook or Twitter. I mean, you can still ascertain the identity of the person who provided a comment on a particular topic, and you can you can know the person's habits, the places he frequents, even his relations and other personal information. And we all know that this compromises not just the person's identity, but their safety and those who are part of their network. So how can we ensure that we are not violating data privacy issues when using big data, and we are not compromising the safety of people? May we hear the comments or insights of our speakers on this? Perhaps we can start with Jana, then AJ, and then we can also get the comments of Professor Hoban. Jana?
Thank you, Ma'am Sheila. So in the case of Twitter, actually it's very useful to read their privacy policies. And it's actually stated that we can only scrape through the Twitter API those that are publicly tweeted. So we can only scrape public tweets. And aside from the policies of websites and apps that contain personal information, it's also important for us to be familiarized with current existing laws. Since in the Philippines we have the Data Privacy Act. So we have to be familiar and balance to ensure that what we are scraping is actually within the bounds of laws and policies.
In terms of in terms of the provisions in the Data Privacy Act, would you know if there are provisions regarding the use of big data, or it's still in the works?
I couldn't really remember a particular section, but there was this interview with one of the NPC officers that we should be careful in web scraping the data, because just because it's available doesn't mean that it can just be scraped.
Okay. You mentioned about Twitter, no? So for Twitter, can only access publicly available public tweets, no? How about for Facebook? Is it the same as well? Because as far as I know, mas mahirap kasi yung mamine yung sa Facebook, no?
Mas mahirap yung Facebook.
Yes, please, Sir Hoban, please join us.
Yeah, it's medyo complicated pa because yung Twitter, you'll have public data. But the moment you play with, let's say, kung sino nag-tweet dito, matetrace mo sa Facebook profile. Diba? You can argue kasi na both are public. But the moment you infer, siguro in your own database na related tong dalawang account na to, you're able to extract na same person yan, and you're able to, if you're not careful with your own systems, if they're not secure, may makaka-hack ng processed data na yan, and anybody can just, use it for whatever purpose, diba? In that case, from my understanding, liable kung sino nag-manage ng data na yan sa Privacy Commission. So you have to be careful lang.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sir Hoban. AJ, please, you may have something to say.
Yeah, so just to clear out, so in the Waze dataset, there are no PIIs, there are no personally identifiable information. So the UIDs, which I showed a while ago, are UIDs for reports, not UIDs for user IDs. So in tracking the movement of people, what we can only really see are these reports for wherein a jam occurred, and it's anonymized. As also, in addition, the analysis that we create are not meant to model a specific individual's behavior as they go along and monitor their movement along track. We will come up with aggregated analysis that apply to more general settings for, of course, policymaking.
Thank you to all our speakers. Well, another question, another important question is, who owns big data? Well, big data is just out there and it multiplies each day. I asked about the issue of ownership because it is linked to access. And as we all know, access is linked to use. So for example, traffic data generated through Waze. So can the platform limit certain organizations from using it? So can Waze, as the one that generated the data, set rules on how their traffic data can be used when shared with other organizations? I ask this because this is a good way to ensure that data will not be misused. AJ?
Yes. So actually, to answer, Waze owns it. That's the first answer. And if you're going to try to access their data, there are very specific rules that you must follow. The first, you cannot use the data and analyze it and then present it in an external platform unless you get their permission. So in all of these transactions that we extract information from them, we analyze it, it goes back to them for final approval on whether or not it can be shared outside. And thankfully we got it. We got that from them.
Okay. Let's go. How about our other speakers? Would you have anything to contribute? Or we can dive into the other questions we have here from our audience. Yes, perhaps we can do that now. And we have one here. Some of the questions actually have been answered already, but I will pick up several or some questions that I think are relevant. And this is for the benefit of those who are watching us on Facebook because they cannot see the Q&A box. Okay, we have one here from, okay, Jana, you answered this already, but perhaps you can answer this again. On social, from John Romano, on social media data, and I think he meant Twitter data, what are the tools used by the researchers in ensuring that tweets are reliable and accurate?
So actually, unlike official statistics such as samples and surveys like the ones generated by the Philippine Statistics Authority, big data like tweets are less likely to undergo data curation processes to maintain data quality. Since these tweets may not be nationally representative, since Twitter users may have more concentration in certain demographics, like let's say more young people are using Twitter, and access is also limited in that those who have internet access or those who have Twitter accounts are the only ones being captured from the Twitter dataset. So, but researchers can still utilize these data because it's fast and cheap, but keeping in mind always about its limitations and audience. So we always have to remember how we're going to use it, and not as replacements, but more as complements to traditional data sources like surveys and censuses.
Thank you, Jana. This other question is for AJ. On the traffic data that you analyze, and this one is again from John Romano. Did the paper elaborate more on the spatial and temporal analysis, why there are days or years with high jams or delays? If so, can you cite some main factors causing traffic jams or congestions? AJ?
Okay. Hello. So yes, actually, we inferred based on the days, based on common sense information, what days would most likely be congested. And based on our EDA or exploratory data analysis, what we inferred actually matched the results. But in terms of validating this with actual information and behavior of people as they go along in traffic management in their venturing traffic, we haven't done that yet in terms of validating it. And for the years represented, we actually did some analysis on frequency distributions. And we noted that for 2019, there were 3 years that were not represented. I mean, there are 3 months. So it's January, February, and March. And it just so happens that January is one of the most congested months following December in all of the frequency distributions that we made. So that's probably one of the reasons why we see that in the trends, 2019 somehow falls under 2020, 2021, and 2022, at least for one metric, which is distance of a jam. We will also, of course, look into some historical aspects when we create a more extensive research. We will look into actual road closures that occurred, any events that happened in the past, and mobility restrictions that were imposed during these time periods to create more sensible analysis.
Thank you very much, AJ. We have a question here for Prof. Hoben. And because you mentioned ChatGPT in your when you delivered your comments, and okay, we have this one is from Ivory Galang, who is from PIDS. She said there is a growing concern regarding the use of ChatGPT, especially in the academe. So she's asking if you think there is a need to regulate the use of artificial intelligence. Hoben?
How much time do I have? No, well, I shared in my answer that my personal take is we shouldn't ban it at all. I know some teachers are in disagreement. No, for me, kasi it's a new tool. It's like a calculator. Sure, there are certain tests where bawal yung calculator, etc. There are other subjects where a calculator might be needed, or even a computer might be needed. And for us to do a blanket policy involving whether to use it or not might be doing our students a disservice, at this point at least. So my stand really is just to look at it from a guided principles perspective and differ as much as possible. Any policy that may be in danger of being a one-size-fits-all, and it hampers innovation, it hampers creativity. So that's just my take. And I know of several fellow faculty and administrators who are of the same mindset. So parang wait and see. And see how, personally, I also use it in the classroom. Katabi ko yung ChatGPT when I do lectures.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Hoben. AJ, do you share the same thoughts as Hoben?
Let me just say yes. Yeah.
Okay, would you like to elaborate on that, expound on that, or?
Maybe later. This is just we're treading carefully here.
Okay, understood. Okay, Jana, any thoughts on do we have to regulate the use of AI?
Sir Joben is actually my friend on Facebook. So I actually tend to agree with his sentiments and his insights on the open AI or the ChatGPT, since this actually somehow the results generated from ChatGPT will actually tell you what not to write in it. For example, if there are assignments given on essays. So yeah.
Have you tried using ChatGPT to come up with a draft literature review, Jana? Have you tried it? And what was the result?
Not yet, but I'm planning to. Just kidding, since we have an inception report.
On that note, what ChatGPT can't do is help precisely with research, review of related lit, and if you ask it to cite sources and come up with a bibliography, it will create fake entries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that much we teach the students. Wag niyong asahan ng ChatGPT to come up with your RRL.
So have you had students using ChatGPT to do essays?
Yes. I'm an outlier. So in my syllabus, I tell them explicitly, we will be okay with using ChatGPT. Just declare it.
Oh, okay. So there has to be transparency in the use of the technology.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's worked pretty well naman.
Okay, mukhang mabait si si Prof Hoben sa mga estudyante niya. But yeah, sabi nga niya may caution doon So dapat alam natin yung limitations ng technology. Let's jump to an important question, okay? And this one is from Emmanuel Porzuelo. And may I have the insights of our speakers on this. What is the best approach to deal with conflicting results between enterprise-driven big data and government official statistics? Jana has answered this already, but this is really a good question. Perhaps we can, throw it back to you again. Jana, please, and then we can go to AJ and Prof Hoben. Please.
Yes. Thank you, Ma'am Sheila. So I've actually mentioned that it's important to remember that since these are two data sources, they may have also different methodologies and they may cover different concepts, definitions, and respondents. So for example, for PSA, since we've worked a lot of official statistics and data with them, when we talk about surveys on businesses, we are talking about establishments. So the results would be about establishment-based surveys, whereas in enterprise-driven big data, I'm not really that familiar with this type of data, but I think this may have they may cover different concepts. So let's say if PSA uses establishment-based, then maybe the enterprise-driven big data is looking more on transactions or as a whole enterprise. So the good thing about government official statistics is that this undergoes data curation processes wherein data is really being pre-tested, and the concepts and definitions are mostly widely accepted. So with enterprise-driven big data, this is more this is faster and cheaper, but again, the quality and reliability of the data should still be examined.
Thank you very much, Jana. AJ, any thoughts?
Okay, so actually this was encountered in the past before. I'm not going to go into specifics, but there was a time wherein case statistics for, say, COVID were being monitored by two data sets or two data collectors. So at one side, there are those who are closer to the ground, who actually get this information and are able to validate it more by going, house to house and ask if this really represents reality in their case. And another one that does more of a extraction via less traditional methods. You have to look at motivations between those who will be using the data. If it's something like for accounting or auditing purposes, like if you're actually looking at cases of COVID-19 in your area, in level terms, you would probably be more cautious with accuracy if you are from, say, the local government, because any additional COVID-19 case means more to you than someone who was just looking at it from a bird's eye perspective, because it would factor in your key performance indicator. Any additional case, dagdag case yan, it's not good for us. So there's that from their side. And of course, they validate it more. And the reason why they do that is because it comes back to their motivations. And for those who actually analyze it in a less traditional way, who are less sensitive with the accuracy of the data, such as big data, for example, they're more interested in learning trends, patterns, and making projections or simulations. Not specifically in terms of level terms of how many this or that, or just merely counting occurrences in the ground, but in really figuring out how we can go about using information to carry more complex analysis and for creating projections that we can use for creating policies. Of course, we have to look at whether these match, not in level terms, but whether the trends and the patterns that we observe for both of these data sources more or less mirror each other in a general sense. Then we can rely quite a bit on the less intricate data sources, meaning less intricate in terms of data collection and validation. But if these completely do not mirror each other, then I would say that we might want to, of course, go with those data sources that have undergone more extensive data creation, data cleaning, and validation measures.
Thank you very much, AJ. And Prof. Hoban, would you have anything to say in response to the question?
It's hard to answer because it's case to case. So I come from the enterprise world.
Okay.
I've had a little background in government dealings. No? So it boils down to, for a specific case, what would be more reliable from your perspective? Like if it's the source of truth, for example, transactions like what Jana mentioned, and you have an enterprise resource planning system that already captures these. So madali eh. Like whatever passes through the point of sale system, or in the case of telco, what gets billed, for example, gets fed into the big data data lake, whatnot. So kung may mali man doon, you can always go back to your scripts kung may bug, etc. It's harder in, let's say, survey types of data gathering, where a lot of human involvement is unpredictable, basically. And aside without, I hope I don't get into trouble with this. Yung early on during the COVID reporting, people were saying, oh, bakit 25, and then 300. Wearing my enterprise lens, that kind of indicated capacity more than being stagnant. So possibly kasi maraming cases, but ito rin na-encode. And then true enough, over time, na-establish, kulang ng encoders. Diba? So there's that human element, and siguro to enrich the question, maybe some discipline in the enterprise space might help debug or help analyze further what's wrong with the data gathering techniques in government, and vice versa. So I'm not saying enterprise is always right. No? May mga best practices rin sa government that can be applied in enterprise. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Thank you very much, Prof. Hoban. The following question is for AJ on their use, his team's use of Waze data. Okay, this is from Melody Fundano. How did the research paper address the poor satellite systems in some areas in Metro Manila wherein users of the Waze data experiencing wrong directions from Waze?
Does this mean if, for example, I inputted, I want to go here, and then it says that I'm actually facing the other way, and therefore gives me another route? If it's in that case, that's not captured in the data. So we have to adjust it for that.
Okay. Another question on the use of Waze by Maria Teresa Rivera. She wants to know if from high density cities like in Mindanao, what other traffic analysis methods can be used, considering that Waze is not used in these cities?
All right, so this is where things get a little bit exciting. We can use, assuming that you have access to it, satellite imagery, and using neural networks, you can essentially look at, from a bird's eye perspective, road networks in these high density cities or areas, and see those satellite images if there are any indications that there's traffic congestion in that area. And using some classification mechanism, say this particular image right here seems like it depicts traffic in the area. Therefore, this is a congestion using some data science hacks. You can essentially apply that and use it for other images, those satellite imagery. And then, depending on how frequent it is, you can classify other images as having congestions or not a long time. And then that's how you can track and come up with a non-traditional data set that monitors traffic congestion.
Okay, thank you very much for that, AJ. This next question is for our paper authors, no? And Enriqueta Reston asks if she wants to know the data gaps that your research was able to address in the light of current digital transformation and ICT innovations. This is in light of in connection with the title of the paper, which is addressing data gaps through innovative data sources. So Jana, what do you think were the data gaps that the study that this PIDS published study was able to address?
For the Philippine tourism data, for example, we actually mentioned that some of the publicly data available are produced annually, and some of the available data at the local government level for certain tourist spots may not also have undergone data curation. But just to complement those data with what's currently being talked about on the internet or in Twitter, we wanted to see what could be the top tourist destinations that were mentioned on Twitter. And it was actually mentioned that it was actually verified that Boracay was actually one of them. So I think the value in examining these types of data, especially in Philippine tourism, is more on learning about the sentiments of potential and those who have already visited some of the tourist destinations in the Philippines. So at least based on the initial analysis or emotions classification, a lot of them were joyful with their experiences, at least. But for those who, let's say, answered that they were sad or they were surprised, I think it's also worth giving it a more a deeper examination on why. And so that could also give us insights to improve their experiences as tourists, or what could be the demands out there on the internet, since internet is a very powerful, or the social media is very powerful in terms of advertising and providing exposure to these travel destinations.
And you also process some data regarding related to violence against women. That's also very insightful, Jana. Okay. AJ, as one of the authors of the study, would you have anything to say?
So initially we were talking about the discussion was there could probably be a way by which we monitor traffic in a more frequent and less costly manner. And it's actually good news that of course, our traffic managers actually use big data to analyze that issue, as reported by the director. And perhaps one of the data gaps that we can fill in the future is essentially trying to find the actual use cases that go beyond just capturing the extent of traffic. It's in terms of creating simulations using that data set or that big data. It's in terms of coming up with measurement frameworks upon we can look at the impacts of any policies or any experiments that were done in certain areas with regard to traffic.
Thank you very much, AJ. Okay, another question here, and this time it's about measuring the reliability of these alternative approaches. And Julius, this one is from Julius Dumangas. Have you tried to measure statistically the reliability of these alternative approaches to generating data, especially encoding and aggregating qualitative information in terms of converting qualitative information from Twitter and other social media platforms into frequency statistics? What are the safeguards to ensure validity and reliability in the measurement of key concepts? Any thoughts? Professor Hoben, would you like to take a crack at this question? Then I can call the rest.
Well, in terms of statistics, I'm not too qualified, but if it's generalizability, I think Jana alluded to it already. It might not be the best source, at least. But you can derive certain descriptive statistics, not necessarily for generalizability, but just to extract quantitative information like sentiments, may sentiment score, etc. Word count, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Jana, would you have any response? Is Jana still in the meeting room? Or perhaps I can call AJ first. AJ?
All right. For qualitative information, for example, I have to somehow map it back to the population, as Jana alluded to. She was saying a while ago that we might not be sure how reliable this is until we estimate just how representative this non-traditional data is. And you can actually get that with some demographic statistics if it's available in the data set, and see if it generally matches the distributions that are established in the population.
Okay, we're waiting for Jana to re-enter the meeting room. I heard that she got disconnected, but perhaps I can read this question, which is actually directed to Director Gail of the MMDA. I'll just read it, and what we will do is we will forward this question to her, and we can also publish her answer in the event page, in the page for this event. Okay. From Ivory Galang, national agencies such as the DPWH and the DA and local governments involved in transportation infrastructure construction should be made aware of the findings and benefits of the CTMP project. Ivory added that she is curious how well we can incorporate the quality of roads, such as in terms of the length, the width, the type of road, whether concrete or rough road in the existing database. There are studies linking public corruption to the quality of public infra. She added that maybe we can potentially solve corruption and inadequacy of roads through the use of data analytics. Thank you for that comment, Ivory. We will forward it to Director Sheila, Gail Sheila of Satura-Quingco of the MMDA. Okay, let's entertain some more questions. Okay, perhaps at this point, our speakers can share with us how we can encourage more users of new data sources, particularly from government, for improving their operations, making government more productive, and making government and helping government make more informed policy decisions. AJ, would you like to answer this question? And then we can go to Professor Hoben.
Okay, so the way we do it, at least, is we always make sure that before we carry out any extensive or complex analytics, we have to know what they need. And once you know what the government needs, you, of course, carry out your analysis and show them that, okay, this is what you need, this is what you can do using this data sets that we have. And we have to be very careful with interacting with the audience and packaging the results and etc. For these to not be too intimidating for the general audience. The data, as scientists, as someone told us before, can be pictured as just these creative people who make paintings using data. So we just, instead of using our paintbrushes and whatnot, canvas, we use data and our programming languages. But at the end of the day, no one really cares how, or maybe some people care how someone painted that picture in the first place. But mostly what one would like to see in the end is the final output and how it would elicit a response from them. And that's how we should package our analysis in such a way that we can have more buy-in from them.
Thank you, AJ. Professor Hoben, would you have anything to say?
Yeah, I agree with AJ's top-down approach. There is, though, a second approach, which is bottom-up, where you can actually play around with a few data sets and combine and do exploratory data analysis on your own. Because there's this thing about you won't really know what you need unless you see something. You know? So if you approach it from an iterative standpoint, you have a few data sets to play around with. Just mash them together without any particular need. Diba? Some insights will emerge and then you show your stakeholders. Patingi-tingi lang, diba? Hey, ganun pala yan. Can you get another data set and play around with it? Diba? So with that approach, you can have quick wins and then you have buy-in already. At least the stakeholder will say, I want more. Can you give more? Then you can start asking, oh, can you give me access to this other data set? Malakas ka naman dyan. Diba? O sige. Diba? So top-down, bottom-up, it's perfectly fine.
Yes. Okay, well said. Okay, I think Jana is back in the meeting room. Jana, welcome back. So the question is, and then this has been answered already by AJ and Prof. Hoben, is how can we encourage more users, particularly the government, to explore and use alternative data sources for improving their operations and let's say making more informed decisions, making more informed policy decisions?
I think there also needs to be more appreciation in terms of the data, not just about the big data, but sometimes we at the government, we actually collect a lot of data from our forms, both online and in paper. So I think we can also start with exploring what meaningful insights could we gather or generate from the data that we currently have before we actually explore also what's out there. Because for government agencies, there are a lot of offices with functions like monitoring and evaluation. And these offices actually collect voluminous data sets. And I think it's also beneficial to learn even descriptive statistical analysis and undergo capacity building and trainings on how they can actually utilize that data to improve their systems.
Okay, so in the Philippines, is it correct to say that the use of big data is still in exploratory stage?
I cannot really speak for all sectors, since, for example, the ICT sector might be more advanced, unlike sectors which utilizes manual labor. But I think the important thing to remember is that whatever data whatever data we have, there is a lot of there's a lot of story to gain from it. And with big data that provides cheap and fast stream of information, there is a lot of untapped possibilities, as
That's right.
mentioned by Director Quingco earlier in her presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Jana. We have a question here, and since we only have a few minutes left, no, before we close the discussion, we will have this for our final question, and we've requested our president to answer this, and this one is from JV Bautista. Are there policy documents that govern the way how PIDS manages their alternative data sources? Should other agencies adopt something similar before tapping into such resources, or are these resources are there resources that ubiquitous? Okay. Should other agencies adopt something similar before tapping into such resources? Sir?
Hey, thank you for that question. We just start by saying that we are a research institution and we know how data limitations hamper our research. That is why we encourage the team in PIDS to explore the alternative sources of data to complement the existing ones. Is there a policy that or a document governing the way we manage our? The short answer is no, not yet. We are in exploratory stage, or I don't think even we will have that. Remember, we are very have very broad perspective in terms of data, and certainly we are not the only ones doing this. We have followed socioeconomic literature already producing papers using alternative sources of data, and statistical methodologies have been developed on how to handle these types of data sets, and we are following that as well. So when you are exploring, you don't want to put guardrails right now.
That's right.
That's essentially what we are doing, and this research that other people have been doing has encouraged us to experiment as well, because as I've said, we cannot wait for data to be available and given to us in a silver platter. If we can actually this is a very big source of data, simply because it's generated automatically. So you don't one of the biggest biggest cost in the research is data generation. So if these are generated automatically by devices and all of that, the only thing that you need to know is how do you handle that and to produce much more reliable indicators. And I think AG has mentioned that patterns is what we're looking at here, because as you can see, there will be biases. There are no biases. For instance, use of devices are very much income dependent. So this might reflect the sentiments of richer segment of the population who have devices and all of that. Or those kind of, or sometimes, so those are the things that we look at in terms of using this data set. And we know of the risk that we are using, but that's, we always do cost-benefit analysis in terms of using anything. We are economists in the first place. Anyway, so that's my take about that. I don't know if we'll ever have a document, policy document guiding. Maybe if there are, we follow technical methodologies in statistics, and we are the first ones who will tell you what are the properties of these data sets and how do you handle that, and how do you look at, as AJ mentioned, big patterns is much better. for the insights rather than levels, because levels might be our problems. And of course, there are ways of doing that by, if you know, but that's statistics already. You know the basic structure of the population and how many people are using this, so you can adjust to have a better estimate of the population parameter, for instance. But that's statistics. So as I've said, we are exploring this. That's essentially the key
right.
word.
Mm-hmm.
I'm forcing Jana and the team to explore, because we might get much faster or even richer data set from these sources. We just have to be open our eyes to the limitations. That's the essentially our perspective in terms of this area.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Orbeta, for joining our discussion. Yes, at PIDS, this will be a continuing activity, a continuing project, no? Exploring data sources and how to use them, harness them.
Obviously, this is our personal interest. That's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. And we have so many data sources of PIDS. We have our social media, Jana, remember, our Facebook, forthcoming Facebook project, analyzing our Facebook data. Yes, and so many others. So we can have another webinar again once we have the results of that new project. Okay, so at this point, to cap our discussion, may I ask our speakers from some brief parting words if they have any. So may we hear first from our presenters, Jana and AJ. Please, Jana, ladies first.
So not really of parting words, but I'm really thankful that we are given this opportunity at PIDS also to grow and really learn more about big data and other innovative data sources, since as our mandate is about evidence-based through policy research. I think this is really helpful for us at PIDS to examine other data sources out there to be more responsive to the needs of decision makers and other fellow researchers who want to explore more about development issues and formulate meaningful recommendations and policies towards development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jana. And AJ, please.
Thank you. So once again, I'd like to thank everyone for PIDS again for organizing the event and for giving us this platform, our discussants. Professor Ilagan, thank you po, as well as Director Satura-Quingco for her insights. I think one of the key things to remember then, our main message is we do not intend to replace traditional data. We only need to augment traditional data with these non-traditional sources, so that we can address any gaps at the meantime that traditional data has. But of course, when we have more reliable data, traditional data that's been vetted properly, we always defer to that.
Thank you very much, AJ. And Professor Hoben, please.
Yeah, I'd like to thank PIDS for this opportunity to, and this is my first time doing this, and it's quite an experience. And I'd like to take this opportunity na rin to ask PIDS, like, how else can Ateneo be involved in your efforts? Kasi ang nangyari is we teach theory, etc. And we've started with partnerships with the industry, but we'd like to enrich, kasi a lot of the things we need to appease. The students are feeling na puro theory, we don't have any real world impact, etc. Diba? So when we teach things, sana nandun na yung data sets, whatnot, or partnerships with PIDS and UNDP, etc. If you're open to it, we would like to reach out after this talk and see how we can collaborate.
Thank you very much, Professor Hoben. Well, what an interesting discussion we just had. Thank you very much to all our guests. Friends, please join me in thanking them through a big virtual clap. And we also appreciate everyone's active participation in the open forum. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and learned a lot as well. And as we have witnessed today, along with unlocking the infinite possibilities from big data, it is equally important to address the issues attendant to their use, such as data privacy, confidentiality, security, and storage. Okay, so we have, I'd like to announce the winners of our webinar raffle. For those of you who are joining us the first time, well, every webinar, we randomly pick names from our attendees from on Zoom and Facebook. Okay, and we give them a prize as a token of our appreciation. Our raffle winners for this week are John Romano, Phoebe Keith Humok, and Evelyn Villafane. John, Phoebe, and Evelyn, our webinar team will get in touch with you for the delivery of your prize. And finally, we have some reminders. Okay, so you can access all the presentations from today's webinar on the PIDS website, and also flash on the screen is the link to the full study. Please answer the feedback survey that will pop on your screen after this webinar. Your comments are important to us to improve our virtual events. In addition, please regularly visit our website and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We also have a YouTube channel where you can access the recordings of all our events. Today's webinar is our last for February, but we have a new set of topics for March. Okay, so next week on March 2, we have our webinar in support of the celebration of the National Women's Month. And this webinar is initiated by the Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines project of PIDS. It's entitled Breaking Barriers for a More Inclusive Future for Women, and we will have presenters from different partner organizations of the SERPI network. Then on March 16, we will have the virtual launch of the newest book of PIDS, entitled How Modern is Philippine Agriculture and Fisheries, the Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Act After a Quarter Century. That will be on March 16 in the afternoon. And on March 23, we'll have our virtual forum on maximizing social impact, the power of data and policy. This is co-organized by PIDS, ID Insight, and the Ateneo Policy Center. Okay, so finally, we would also like to acknowledge the various organizations from the government, academe, civil society, business, and international development community. Also, those from the media that join us today. This concludes our virtual policy forum. Again, our sincerest thanks to all our guests and participants on Zoom and Facebook for your active participation. We hope that you'll join us again next week. Stay safe and stay informed too. Maraming salamat po.